Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Kathleen, and I am a program manager with Nevada Humanities, which is our state's council partner of the National Endowment for the Humanities. Nevada Humanities is also home to the Nevada Center for the Book, which is our state affiliate for the Center for the Book housed at the Library of Congress. And our Nevada Center for the Book is dedicated to promoting literature and literacy throughout the Silver State. Every year, Centers from the Book from around the nation participate in an initiative called Great Reads from Great Places, which is a list of books representing the literary heritage of the 50 states, the District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, the U.S. Virgin Islands, Guam, American Samoa, and the Northern Marianas. And this list is distributed by the Library of Congress's Center for the Book during the National Book Festival. I think it's really exciting that this year, the Great Reads from Nevada celebrate the smallest creatures of the sea all the way up to the largest fish of our lakes and rivers. So our three authors here today are featured Great Reads authors. We have Bonnie Kelso, who is the author and illustrator of Nudi Gill, Poison Powerhouse of the Sea. And then we also have here with us Zeb Hogan and Stefan Lovgren, who co-authored Chasing Giants in Search of the World's Largest Freshwater Fish. During today's event, we are going to get to meet our featured authors, learn a little bit more about them and our work, and then we'll take time to answer any audience questions. So feel free to share any comments or questions you might have as our conversation progresses, and then we'll make sure to ask them at the end of our conversation today. This recording will be shared on YouTube after our event ends in case you would like to watch it later as well. So I would love for all of our authors to go around and share a little bit about themselves with a brief introduction before we dive into our questions today. I think it's always fun when we get to hear straight from the authors instead of me just reading a bio. So Zeb, I'm wondering if you would mind getting us started.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Zeb Hogan. I'm a fish ecologist at the University of Nevada, Reno in the biology department. I've been at UNR since 2006. I also hosted a television show on National Geographic called Monster Fish from 2007 until 2018. I actually am originally from Arizona, grew up outside of Phoenix, got my start interest in fish, doing fish surveys and as an undergrad at the University of Arizona. I went on and did my PhD at the University of California, Davis, where I got involved with National Geographic as a grantee. They funded some of my graduate work. And that work with National Geographic eventually led to an interest in the world's largest freshwater fish, which we'll be talking a little bit more about today.
Thank you, Zeb. Stefan, would you mind going next?
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Stefan Lovgren, and I am the co-author of Chasing Giants. I also work in the College of Science at the University of Nevada, Reno, but I actually live in Las Vegas. I am Swedish. I was born in Sweden and grew up there. And I've been a journalist for more than 25 years, probably. Much of my work has been international. I've worked in Africa and Asia, and I lived in Kenya for several years and worked as the Africa correspondent for an American news magazine. I began working with National Geographic in what was then their online news service. This was probably 20 years ago. And a few years after that, I was asked by Nat Geo to travel to Cambodia and Thailand to do a story on one of their explorers. And that explorer turned out to be Zeb Hogan. So he introduced me to this world of fish and river conservation. And we've been working closely ever since, writing stories about freshwater issues. And I'm also producing videos. I'm a filmmaker as well. So the reporting and the research that we've done for that book during those years have sort of become the basis for this book that we've written.
Thank you, Stefan. Bonnie, would you mind sharing a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Bonnie Kelso. I am an author and illustrator. My background is in fine art. I went to the Rhode Island School of Design, studied fine art there. I also have a background, about 12 years experience as an exhibit designer. I worked for all kinds of companies. We did a lot of trade show work and visitor centers and exhibitions for places like NASA, Smithsonian, and National Geographic as well. So I'm also a muralist. I've been doing some murals here locally in Las Vegas where I live. So yeah, you can see my art out in public sometimes.
Great, thank you, Bonnie. All right, so I wanted to start a conversation today by having our audience get to know a little bit, getting to know a little bit more about your books in case they haven't read them. So I'm wondering, I think Zeb, I'll probably start out asking you this question, and then I'm happy to open this up to anyone else who wants to follow up. Something I love about this year's book festival, as I mentioned, is that all the great reads from Nevada have to do with the water. And I think, when people think about Nevada, they don't really necessarily think about water unless maybe you're from Reno and you're familiar with maybe like Lake Tahoe, but a lot of people think of Las Vegas first and the desert and the high heat. You grew up yourself in Arizona, as you mentioned, and I'm wondering, what got you fascinated in eventually taking this journey and discovering all these freshwater fish and this journey for discovering the largest freshwater fish in the world. How do you go from desert or Sweden to traveling around the world in search of creatures large and small?
Yeah, thank you. I guess it's a little bit counterintuitive, but I grew up in Arizona, a desert outside of Phoenix. I live in Reno, high desert now. But I think, I always loved the outdoors, always loved nature, always been curious about the natural world. And when you live in the desert, the best place to be, or at least for me, was always near water. So I always grew up valuing water. Water was special. We would go camping or hiking, always somewhere where there was water. So I grew up with a natural love for water, which is maybe that's typical for someone who grows up in the desert. And that love and curiosity about water eventually led to a job, studying fish, even as an undergraduate research assistant, eventually led to a PhD focused on fish ecology and fish migrations. And then ultimately to this book and this question of what is the world's largest freshwater fish, which is basically the premise of our book, Chasing Giants in Search of the World's Largest Freshwater Fish.
Bonnie, what about you? What got you interested in, I guess your background is in art, but of course you have written a book about nudibranchs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was actually born in Florida near the beach. So I remember as a child just combing the beaches with my grandmother, picking up different shells and inspecting them, seeing what washes up. So that's really where my fascination for these small mollusks really started. And then, it's probably been 20 years now that I've lived here in Las Vegas. And it is like Zeb says, you do like gain an appreciation for water that you may have taken for granted in other places where you've been. It is special here. And when I look around the valley from Las Vegas, I always imagine what it was like here as a shallow sea so long ago, and that all those mountains around us are, islands. It just blows my mind every time. So I love to talk about that with kids too when I'm introducing Nudi Gill.
Stefan, do you have a similar experience living in Las Vegas now? And of course, you're from Sweden originally, so maybe your background with water is a little bit different, but I would love to hear your take on this.
Yeah. I can't think of two places that look more different than the Swedish islands where I spent my summers growing up as a kid, and Las Vegas, which obviously is in the desert. I also have I feel like I have a close connection to water. Like I said, I did grow up and spent summers on outside of Stockholm. There's 30,000 islands in the Stockholm archipelago, and that's where I spent my summers. And I was loved being on the water and going fishing and swimming and also there's I find that there's sort of a sense of mystery to the ocean, especially, and to water. It's a world that is different from ours, and that kind of sense of mystery always spoke to me, and as a storyteller and a journalist. So.
I love that you mentioned storytelling as a writer and journalist. I think that sometimes it's hard to take that plunge into sharing your creative thoughts with others, whether it's in the form of nonfiction or fiction. Zeb, I'm wondering if this might be a question for both you and Stefan, but what inspired both of you to sort of start writing Chasing Giants? And Zeb, I know you've written books for children previously, correct? But what made you think, okay, now it's time to write this longer book that has photos inside, which are sort of, I guess, the adult equivalent of a picture book when there's photos inside. But what made you want to start writing Chasing Giants?
Stefan, well, I'd been working on fish for a long time. Traveled to Thailand on a Fulbright scholarship in 1997, saw a Mekong giant catfish for the first time when I was in Thailand, which at that time was the world's largest freshwater fish. And so I guess for the last more than 20 years, my research has been focused on the ecology and conservation of the world's largest freshwater fish. And Stefan and I have done a lot of stories together. We've traveled together. And it was pretty clear that the story of these fish, especially the story of the world's largest fish as a group, hadn't been told before. Most of them are endangered. They're kind of emblematic and symbolic of the regions where they occur, both the challenges that they face and maybe some of the potential solutions to protect them. So the fish, I'm naturally curious about fish and rivers and water anyway, but the fish turned out to be a good way to tell the stories of these places and of the threats that all the fish face. And it was a story that hadn't been told before. And so that's why I wanted to write the book.
Was it difficult picking out which stories you wanted to share? How was it like structuring the book? Like, did the two of you sort of come up with an outline? What was this sort of co-authoring relationship and partnership like?
Yeah. Do you want me to answer that?
I can just say the book starts with the catch of the world's at the time world's largest freshwater fish in 2005 in Thailand. So that's the start of the book, and then I'll let Stefan take it from there.
Yeah, I did just want to pick up on what Zeb said about I'm approaching this from a journalist perspective. I'm a journalist, and I'm looking for great stories, and as a journalist, you're looking for stories that are important and maybe haven't been told before. So this to me was a story that had never been told before. Nobody had looked at this on a global scale, and so that's what made the story so intriguing. And it's a broader story about the health of the world's rivers and lakes and where these giant fish live. But it has this great jumping off point. What is the world's largest freshwater fish? So I remember coming back to the United States from a trip to Cambodia, and the guy in customs was asking me where I was and what I was doing, and I said I was reporting for this book. Oh, what's the book about? Oh, it's about the world's largest freshwater fish. And he lit up, and he's like, "What is the world's largest freshwater fish?" And we got into this conversation. So you're looking for these kind of jumping off points or hooks for no pun intended for the stories that you're telling.
Are there any stories left untold? I'm sure there are many. Was it just, I guess was it hard picking like which ones would go into the book? And do you think you would ever share those stories elsewhere?
Yeah, I mean, there's many stories. We're trying to tell the story of these particular fish. The fish that Zeb, and I can he can tell us more about this, but the fish that we focused on are fish that can grow over 200 pounds or 6 feet long. And there's about 30 or so species around the world, freshwater species that fit those criteria. And there's I mean, we talk about many of them in the book, but not all. And there's a lot to say about all these fish. So there's certain with one species we might get into the conservation issues, and other fish we might talk about the kind of mythical aspects that surround the fish and so forth. So there's many stories to be told.
Bonnie, I would love to hear from you because your book, I think it actually has a lot of the same themes as Chasing Giants, but you take the approach of studying nudibranchs and writing about them. Can you tell us more about nudibranchs? First of all, I think there may be some people here who have never heard of them before in our chat. So I always love to introduce new animals to others, but also why you felt compelled to tell this story in your book.
Sure. Nudibranchs are marine mollusks, so they can be very small, just centimeters long, and they can also grow larger. Some, like the Spanish dancer, can get to like the size of a football. They are very diverse creatures. They come in so many different colors, patterns, body shapes, which makes them very interesting to look at and study. I am not a biologist, or I'm not a scientist, but I've always been a nudibranch fan. Ever since I started diving recreationally, that they've always been my favorite animal in the ocean. And it's such a special thing to come across one in the wild.
And your book sort of tells the story of the nudibranchs through a little girl who is snorkeling for the first time, right?
Yeah, so I took the perspective of a little girl who is trying to snorkel for the first time. And, the very first page, she's putting on all her gear, and she's like, it takes a lot of gear to become a fish, like she wants to be a fish, but she's very awkward. She is the fish out of water, right? And so by the time the story ends and she meets Gill and she sees how confident Gill is, and they interact, she becomes more confident and comfortable in the water. So it is kind of this side character of the snorkeler, sort of her journey of getting more comfortable being in the ocean and in a different animal's home, basically.
Thank you for sharing that. Something I love too about the three of you is that you're all very experienced travelers for different reasons. And I think that travel is a great way to not only see new places, but learn more about other ways of life and other communities. And also when you come home, I guess you come home with a fresh perspective. And I'm wondering if, in your travels, you've had any, particular moments that have stood out to you and inspired your own work, or maybe attitudes about things in other ways. I would love to hear from you about, places you've seen or interesting moments. Bonnie, you have traveled around the world twice, for instance, and I'm sure that you have visited many of the same countries that Zeb and Stefan have during their travels, searching for the world's largest freshwater fish. So I'm wondering if you can start us off by talking about maybe just some memorable moments while traveling the world and the importance of travel to you.
Sure. Yeah. Especially being such a lover of the ocean and the water, I was able to experience different places that are very well known for their beautiful, diverse life and on the reefs and otherwise. I do remember seeing a giant catfish being caught in Kelso National Park. I went there for like an experience where we were going to be living on these raft houses, and it was really fun. But I remember when we came back from that event, we just came into the little dock area they had, and they were pulling in these enormous catfish, and we were all just like, when you see them with your own eyes, you're just stunned at just how incredibly large and amazing they are.
Zeb, would you mind sharing some moments from your own travels or how travel has affected your work?
Yeah, I mean, the word travel, I associate a lot of memories and experiences with the word. I mean, for me, travel started as going camping, and just, going away from my home where I lived and just exploring. I guess I kind of early on always associate travel with kind of an exploration. to a desert stream or somewhere where we would go camping as kids. And then as I got older, I mean, I traveled to Thailand in 1997. That was my first time traveling to Asia. I didn't know what I was getting into. I went over to live in Thailand for a year as a Fulbright scholar, and that trip changed the whole trajectory of my life. So in that sense, travel has, I mean, on a personal level, has been incredibly important to me and to who I am and to what I've ended up doing with myself. I also think, travel, I experienced it, for example, when we were filming, so filming shows. And that's another kind of concept I reflect on a lot. Before we started doing the shows, I was traveling maybe as a researcher, I was traveling as an individual. When we started filming, and I guess to a certain extent, writing a book is the same way, you're traveling, but you have a way to share those experiences with other people. And so when we started filming, these big fish, it wasn't just me that was able to experience these amazing creatures, but there was a way to share it with others. And so that's one of the things that I enjoyed about writing the book, about working on the shows, is just being able to share those wonderful experiences that I've had traveling and all the wonderful people that I've met as well.
Stefan, you have traveled all the way from Sweden to the United States, and of course, lots of places in between. So I'm wondering if you could speak on this. I think for you, it's also a little bit different too, because you immigrated somewhere. But for you, how has travel affected you in your own work personally? What is the importance of travel to you?
Sure. Yeah. No. I mean, I love traveling, and it's traveling to me is something that it kind of aligns very well with my journalism career. I associate that with work a lot. But at the same time, there's obviously a strong element of explorations. I've talked about that, curiosity, learning about new things, figuring things out, and that's what journalism is about. One place that and I've spent traveled a lot in Africa and Asia. I think I was as the Africa correspondent for the magazine. I think I visited 35 African countries. So, but one of the places that I got to visit for this book project was Bhutan. Because one of the fish that we write about in the book is the golden mahseer, which is found in the rivers in the country of Bhutan. And for those of you who don't know where Bhutan is, it's a very small mountainous Himalayan country stuck in between India and China, and next to Nepal. And I had the privilege of going there a few years ago, and this is an isolated country that until relatively recently was completely shut off from the rest of the world. And even now it limits the number of tourists that are allowed into the country. And this was just an absolutely mind-blowing experience going there. This, the stunning scenery and traveling around in this small country. But one of the things that impressed me the most was the environmental, stewardship that people in Bhutan value very, very highly. I think it was the first carbon negative country in the world, which means that they keep more carbon than they emit. And the 2/3 of the country remain forested. It's something that's enshrined in their constitution. And so just traveling around in that place and seeing this incredible, the responsibility that people felt like they had towards protecting nature and protecting the animals there and the golden mahseer, that was just really amazing.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I'm wondering, I think that's a really good transition into my next question. We touch on aspects of this a little bit, but again, so all of your two books touch on, the importance of or I guess I have the reader thinking about the importance of the creatures who live in the water and the impact that humans have on, these environments and ecosystems. Bonnie, I'm curious about you, as someone who writes a lot for children, do you find that, a lot of your books tend to be like informational, like when you write for children, like how do you find that balance between, having something that's fun, but also teaches them something important, like, these
Right.
very early life lessons about, taking care of the earth?
Yeah, it's very hard to keep the attention of young children these days. I mean, I guess it's always been, but especially now when they have so many options and so many visual stimulus in their lives. Yeah, so with my informational fiction books, I try to balance the information that I'm giving them with humor and storytelling that will hopefully help them remember the information in the future. So that's important for me.
Mm-hmm. Zeb, do you find the same when you're teaching maybe like, undergraduates or graduates at UNR? Do you draw on your own work and try to find a way to, not necessarily preach at your students, but you want to imbue them with, like this importance of, taking care of what's around us?
We do a lot of field work.
Yeah.
So I have one graduate student right now, and she's actually living this year in Cambodia. So getting out and actually doing work in the field is a big part of what I do and what my students do. I'm also co-advising. Stefan and I are both involved in a project called Wonders of the Mekong, which is a government USAID funded project in Cambodia. And we have a team of about 20 Cambodians and probably 15 students that I help co-advise. And very much applied science, getting out in the field. And so for me, I've found that one of the best ways to teach people about some of these issues is to actually go out, get in the field, figure out what's going on, see issues for themselves. And I guess in a bigger way, I mean, that's also what we're doing with the book is I do think the book deals with the world's largest fish that can get over 6 feet pound. There's 6 feet long or 200 pounds, 40 or so species of freshwater fish that can grow that large. And most of them are endangered. So as readers go through the book, we introduce these fish in the first chapters, where they came from, talk about their diversity. In the middle of the book, focus more on some of the challenges that they face. And then toward the end of the book, talk about conservation solutions. So we do try to both introduce and get people excited about the fish, but also acknowledge the threats that they face and point towards some solutions for the future.
Stefan, I'm wondering, in your own work as a journalist, and you also produce films, correct?
Yeah.
Could you talk a little bit more about, I guess, your goal with, I guess all of what you do is about communicating information to the public, which is wonderful. So what is your goal with telling stories and the work that you do in this?
Right. Yeah. Well, I think, just picking up on what Zeb was saying, I think with a project like this, it may sound a little dry and boring, but structure and organization of the book becomes really important. And this is something, there was a lot of thought and work that went into the way that we structured this book. And I'm really proud of that work because I do think that we're talking about these fish that a lot of people have never heard about. So we want to, like Zeb was saying, we want to get them excited about it. And it was important to do that, perhaps before you talk about many of the challenges that we face in trying to protect these animals, but also not be focus too much on the negative or be all about the negative. We want to present solutions and let people know what they can do to protect these environments. I mean, I think for a journalist, I like writing about topics that I'm not necessarily an expert on. I think that as a general journalist, and this is something that I liked when I was living and working in Africa, where I ended up I was doing a lot of stories that were very, it was just a broad range of subjects. You're writing about the environment or politics or culture or economics, and I think that it can be an advantage to sort of approach it from that perspective. You're writing for a general audience. This book is, we want to reach as many people as possible with this book. So, making the material accessible to a general audience, and you need to understand it from a reader's perspective and someone who's not an expert. And at the same time, we want, the science and everything to be solid in the book, and it is. But that's also, I like that collaboration that we were able to achieve. Zeb being the expert on the subject, and I sort of taking a step back and looking at how we best tell the story.
I would love to ask, I guess now I'm thinking about how, again, I think Nevada is so well represented by the three of you this year at the National Book Festival. I think it's just, again, so special to have books that are educational and informative, but also, have these elements of fun and adventure, whether it's, learning more about, these little tiny nudibranchs at the bottom of the ocean, or, about the world's largest freshwater fish. I guess I'd like to bring it home by asking you about some of your favorite places to do or things to do in Nevada for people who have never been there. I think it's always nice to share some pride in our home state, get people excited and say, like, why should people come here? What are some special things about Nevada? And I'm wondering, Bonnie, if you can start there.
Sure. Well, I guess going back to some of the smaller animals, I love going to the wetlands and seeing even like the wetlands here in Clark County, but also the ones out at Armagosa where the little pupfish live in the springs. I just think it's fascinating that these animals have evolved and survived there for so long. That's one of mine.
Yeah, no, it's great. Thank you. Zeb, what about you?
Yeah, I grew up in Arizona, but we spent our summers, my mother's family is from Sacramento, so we spent our summers camping around Lake Tahoe. So that's how we got out of the heat for a month or so every summer. So I grew up exploring Lake Tahoe, which is right in our backyard here, just outside of Reno. And then my son, now here in Reno, we spend our afternoons after he gets off school exploring our local ponds and catching crayfish and bullfrogs. So they're always, and then we just got back last week. We went out to Eastern Nevada near Great Basin National Park. We were camping up at 8,000 feet, aspen groves, 12,000 foot mountains above us. And we spent the week fishing and exploring out there. So Nevada has these pockets. I mean, I guess they're pockets, but many of them for people who love water, all of these places to explore and appreciate nature. And I've been able to, I experienced that in my childhood, and now, been able to share that with my 6-year-old son as well, even, just around where we live here.
I do love sharing that Nevada is one of the most mountainous states. So I'm glad that you brought that up. Sorry, Bonnie, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I was just going to say, Zeb, what's the largest fish in Lake Tahoe?
Mackinac, lake trout, I guess. So people every once in a while say they see sturgeon and things. I do think there were sturgeon released at some point, but I don't think they made it. I don't think they made it. So these days, yeah, probably a big lake trout, which is a fish that you usually find in deeper water. And you're gonna put me on the spot to say what the record is, but off the top of my head, I'd say it's probably about 40 pounds. But
oh, wow.
Everyone can Google it and see how wrong I am.
Right, they'll have fish stories to share.
Stefan, what about you? What are some things or places that you love about Nevada?
Yeah, for me, I mean, this place is like landing on the moon. I've been in Las Vegas now for 2 years, and for me, it's I just walk outside and I look at the mountains that surround Las Vegas, and the people that have come to visit me. I mean, people that haven't been, the few people that haven't been to Las Vegas, they're surprised that there's these incredibly impressive mountains that surround the city, and so I'm really just intrigued by the natural landscape, probably just because it's so different from where I grew up. I try to take as much advantage of it as possible. I've been all over the state, in the time that I've lived here, and I love going hiking and Red Rocks and many other places. So yeah.
Yeah, I think people are surprised that there are waterfalls here, and because you say waterfall and they're like, here? No way.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a waterfall, a really nice hiking trail about half a mile from my house in Reno, and beautiful hike for 3 or 4 miles up to a waterfall. Yeah, so Nevada is a dry state, but we have lots of creeks and mountains, and so there are always new places to explore.
So as we wind down our conversation here, I will invite, our friends in chat, if you have any questions for our authors, feel free to share them and we'll ask them. Otherwise, I'll just ask a couple more questions, and I think that would conclude our conversation for today. I've just had so much fun listening to all three of you. I think that I grew up personally in the Midwest, but I never really thought about the importance of water until I moved out west to Las Vegas for the first time, which is where we started getting these letters in the mail about, you can only, water on certain days, or, really make sure during the summer that you're only using water during, set times. And so I really appreciate that about living here and then sort of thinking about that when I travel elsewhere across the world. I'm wondering if the three of you could share maybe some exciting or upcoming future projects that you're working on, or could also be current. I know Zeb, you mentioned the wonders of the Mekong with Stefan, but I don't know if you have any other, book projects or research projects coming up, or things that you would like to do in the near future that you can share with us.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of exciting things that are going on. One, through the Wonders of the Mekong project, we've been working with our team in Cambodia, with local communities, and we've been doing some tagging, fish tagging. Fish tagging is a way that we learn about fish migrations, movements, their ecology, their home range, how much area they need to survive. And we've been tracking, I think, of over 300 fish, but one really big fish in particular that we've learned is staying in this one area of deep pool. So the Mekong River can get up to about 250 feet deep. And this big stingray is staying in this one pool next to a community that's established protected area in the river. And so that's been kind of a fun, exciting thing that we've been monitoring over the last year, is what this big stingray has been doing, and how it seems to be able to survive despite all of the challenges in the Mekong River, partially through protection of the local community. Just another thing I like to mention is that right now in Reno, there's a museum exhibit. I get the names confused. Monster fish, right, Stefan?
Yes.
Is the name? So there's a museum exhibit all about the world's largest freshwater fish at the Nevada Discovery Museum in downtown Reno. And so that exhibit will be in Reno through the end of the year, through the end of 2023. So anyone in Reno or anyone passing through Reno, if you'd like to learn more about these fish, buy a copy of Chasing Giants and go to the Discovery Museum. And it's a cool exhibit, it has life-size sculptures of all of these fish, and it's a great place to learn more about them.
I hope I can see that exhibit soon. That's really exciting. Thank you. Stefan, could you share some maybe exciting upcoming projects or things that you would like to work on in the near future?
Yeah, so I am working on the project here with Zeb, the Wonders of the Mekong project through UNR, and I continue to write for National Geographic and other magazines. So the research that Zeb was talking about with the stingray that we're following is really groundbreaking research that we're doing, and it was actually on that story was on the front page of the New York Times last week. So we were very excited to see that. We're initiating some new projects in the Mekong. I'm going to go back there in about a month, and go to Cambodia and Vietnam also, because the Mekong River runs through several countries in Southeast Asia, and going to be involved with some different projects there. One of which is we're trying to figure out. The Mekong River is the most productive river in the world. More fish is caught there than anywhere else, any other river in the world. And we're trying to figure out how much the Mekong River is actually worth in monetary terms. So that's a kind of an interesting a study, that a topic that I haven't been involved with before. So that's also speaks to sort of my journalistic mindset.
That's really, that's a really interesting question. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
Bonnie, what about you? Any fun projects or current projects that you would like to share with us?
Yeah, sure. I actually have 5 new picture books coming in the next few years. They're all nature inspired. One is coming out in October I illustrated, that was written by Heather Ferranti-Kinzer and also being published by Gnome Road Publishing. It's called In a Cave, and it's all in rhyme. It's beautifully written, and I show these 2 children and their guide exploring a subterranean ecosystem, and it was so much fun to draw. I hope people will check it out. I also have 3 picture books coming out from Gnome Road Publishing that are in a series, and the first one is Sea Smiles. It's all about weird sea animal teeth. The second one is Sleepy Sea, which talks about the different strange sleeping habits of sea animals. And the third one is Sea Suds, which talks about how sea animals keep their bodies clean, even in the ocean. So I'm excited about those. And I'm currently working on another one called Wonder of the Woods for the Little Press. So that one's going to be a lot of fun too, and reminds me of my time living in North Carolina in the Appalachian Mountains. So a lot of the flora and fauna that I'm drawing is inspired by that. I'm also working on a children's card game, which is related to Nudi Gill. So it's all about marine mollusks. There's 2 different games you can play, and I'm hoping to have these card decks available when I do my school visits, so that I can leave a deck of cards, which are fun to play, but also have a lot of informational facts in them. When I do school visits, I want to leave them with libraries and schools here in Vegas.
I love that there's going to be a game accompanying Nudi Gill, and I believe that
Yes.
people are interested. They can look it up currently. If you go on Crowdfunder without the R, DDR, and look up Nudi Gill, you can find this card game and perhaps get a pack for yourself.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's going to be up for another 11 days, I think, my crowdfunder. So get in there now if you want a pack.
Well, I wanted to thank the 3 of you. Are there any last questions or comments you'd like to share before we say goodbye to everyone today?
I'd love to ask a question to Stefan and Zeb. What do you do when you go to a community where wherein you're seeing that maybe they're overfishing or taking some of the larger fish and using them for food? How do you explain to them the importance of these, apex predator fish in the ecosystem?
Yeah, I struggle to answer the question, only because in my experience, as a conservation biologist, the use of these fish for food is not the primary issue. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that the communities, and I'm really not just saying this, but the communities that I worked with are the advocates. They're the ones that are the most knowledgeable about these fish. They're the ones that understand the importance of their conservation, the importance of protecting the river, even if they're harvesting them. So what's ultimately going to cause the extinction, if these fish do disappear, are going to be things like hydropower dams, really bad pollution. So there are kind of these systemic threats that these fish face that are apart from harvest. And so what we see with big fish is the harvest can bring population levels down, but it very rarely causes complete extirpation or extinction. And so almost everywhere that I've worked, or places we do research or places we filmed, the communities are kind of our partners and advocate for these fish rather than being a problem. I guess that was a long-winded answer. I mean, Stefan, can you help me out? I think you know what I'm saying, but it just it almost doesn't come up. These fish are so rare, they're not very important for food anymore. And the communities, when you're attempting conservation action, people need to come together for the common good and to try to protect something. And the communities are the kind of fundamental pillar of that. We try to be the science of it, but then the communities are the ones that actually can give these issues a voice.
Yeah. I think understanding the needs and concerns of local communities and not sort of approaching it with any kind of confrontational mindset is very important. And I think we're seeing, I mean, in the Mekong, where we have now worked for many years, so I think we can see the some positive results from forming these partnerships and relationships with local communities. A good example of this, as Zeb mentioned early on, that there was a giant catfish that was sort of the unofficial record holder for world's largest freshwater fish that was caught in Thailand in 2005, 646 pounds catfish. And that fish was killed and sold for meat. When I was in Cambodia earlier this year, I went out and visited with some fishers that had caught a very large giant catfish, not as big as that record-holding fish, but a very large giant catfish. That when they caught it, they knew the importance of this fish. They knew how rare it was, and they decided on their own to perform this little ceremony for the fish and release it back into the river. And I think that this, if we want to create awareness about the endangered, or about the status of these fish, and in order to try to protect them, forming these relationships with local communities but at the same time understanding their needs and concerns is really vital.
Oh.
Thank you for your question, Bonnie. Do you have any last questions or comments for one another? I think in that case, I just want to again thank the three of you for meeting today and having this conversation with one another. And for everyone in chat, I wanted to let you know that next Saturday, August 12th, is National Book Festival. So Zeb and Bonnie will be there together with me at our Nevada table. We'll be sure to get some fun photos and videos and share them on social media. So if you're not already following Nevada Humanities, I encourage you to do so by signing up for our newsletter on our website, nevadahumanities.org. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, other places that you might expect to find I guess a humanities council. I don't know if it's Twitter or X now, so I don't really want, not sure which one, but one of those, you can find us there as well. You can find links in the chat if you'd like to fill out a survey and let us know, if you enjoyed today's event, if you'd like to see more of these kinds of talks in the future. And we always just enjoy hearing from our audience in general. But I know that I'm just looking forward to next Saturday and getting to travel to DC, and it's just great fun seeing all of the other Center for the Books spread out in this giant hallway or room. And I do hope that Bonnie and Zeb, that you have fun seeing what all the other tables have and are offering, like what books are representing our nation this year, and also if you can get there early enough, getting some swag for yourself to bring home to you and your families. So thank you again, everyone. Thank you, Bonnie. Thank you, Stefan. Thank you, Zeb. Really enjoyed our conversation, and I really appreciate all the work that you do and, educating our public about the importance of water conservation, of stewardship of our environment, and just, cultivating the sense of curiosity and wonder and appreciation for our world's wonders. I think we need more of that, sometimes. And so I think your work very much accomplishes that.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
great,
you.
Thank you.
All right. Take care, everyone. Goodbye.
Bye.